Well, hello again, my friends, and welcome once more to the Invisible College. My name is Adrian Gilbert, and today we're going to talk about the whole idea of the invisible world of spirit. But before I go into that, I want to say a few words about what this channel is and give you a perspective of the larger view, as it were, where I'm coming from and where this channel is coming from. Now, I want to give you an analogy. I want you to think about there's a particular program on TV that you may have seen. I hope you have. It's called Running with Bear Grylls. And for those of you who don't know, Bear Grylls is a former British Marine, and he's an expert in survival in harsh conditions, and what you have to do to deal with things like deserts and mountains and freezing cold and running water, all these obstacles and problems that people like Marines and SAS have to train for. And he takes people out with him into the wilderness, and they get a taste of having to face their deepest fears and to actually discover their own inner strengths that they didn't know they had. And I want to give you an example. He had an actress with him, one of the last ones I saw, where they did the usual thing in jumping out of a helicopter, and she's being, someone else with her to take her down onto the ground. But still very terrifying because they're sitting on the edge of the helicopter. They haven't got any seats in these helicopters, and being pushed out, and never having done that before, is pretty frightening. But that's only the beginning, of the trials and tribulations that are ahead of her. And he takes her to a place where there's a deep ravine, there's a river running through it, and a deep ravine, very rocky canyon. And in this particular place, there's like a gate that the stream runs through as a sort of knife edge of rock on each side, coming out into the stream with a channel through the middle, and a very thin edge on top of this knife edge. And he says, right, we're going to go across there. And you can see her face. She says, what? Come again? Yeah, you'll be all right, don't worry. I'll go first. And he goes first, walking out onto this narrow ledge, hardly a brick width to walk along. And he gets to the end of it, and he anchors a rope and gets things set up so that she can hook onto this rope while she does it. So should she fall off, she's not going to die. That there is a rope there that will support her. Still terrifying, and I wouldn't like to do this at all, I can tell you. But she bravely goes out there and walks along this ledge and gets to the end, and he says, oh, that was great, but we can't go any further because you can see that there's a break in the ridge where the stream's coming through the river, and we can't get across there, so we're going to have to go down. And you look down, and there's a steep crevasse, it's like a cliff face. He said, oh, we've got to go down there. So he rigs up I got another rope here, and he ties it round a bush, and he says, this bush will be tough enough. It's only it looks quite a small bush growing on the side of this ravine. He said, yeah, that'll be all right. And he ties the rope to that, and they have to abseil down this ravine. And that means leaning out with your rope right out and jumping each bit, and you slide down a bit and your feet come back, and then you slide a bit more and come back. And he says, yeah, you go first. And she has to go first at doing this. And he said, no, lean out further. And, she eventually gets to the bottom. And then he says, right, I'm coming down. He comes down really quickly. because he knows what he's doing, you know. And then they've reached a ledge area, and they've still got to get down further to get to ground level to cross this river. And he says, there's no way, you know, we're going to have to jump. And, you know, you look down, you see this river and the torrent, and they're going to jump into that. It's still a long way down. So he says, I'll go first. He jumps, and then she has to jump. And she joins him. And then they swim across to the other bank. Freezing cold water. So they're now, you know, they've now got wet clothes to add to their tribulations. Anyway, it goes on like this, and then they end up having to eat horrible things, and different times he gets a cricket or something that they have to eat, or they have to drink their own wee, and there are things like this, survival things that you need to know if you were going to be stuck there and you didn't want to die. You know, basically it's life and death. But somehow, because he knows what he's doing, he's been there, he has the confidence that he is a master of this environment, this kind of thing. They trust him, and they trust him that they can go forwards, and you know, they find the confidence and the courage. Somehow he infuses them with the courage to do what they never thought they were capable of doing before, and they discover that actually they are. Actually they are. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, we have a Bear Grylls, a hero, to guide us, and that's Jesus Christ. Now, before you go storming off and say, I'm not listening to this Christian bullshit, I'm not going to give you any kind of preaching. I'm not into that whatsoever. I don't go along with you know, the standard high street church thing, all the rituals, you know, all the standard prayers, and put it on my tongue, will you? That's not the way. The way is, you've got to actually do it. You've got to follow the path. You've actually got to conquer your fears, and you've got to actually do what he did. Now, I'm not saying you've got to go out and be crucified. No. I'm talking about further back in his career. I'm talking about connecting to the Logos stream. Now, what's that, you may ask? Well, if you read the beginning of St. John's Gospel, it says, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, that's a Greek word, logos, that's translated as word, but it actually has much more meaning than that. It means the law, or the command, the commandment. And the law, or commandment, goes out into the universe, the commands of God, commands of, you think of God as being the intelligence in the entire universe, the entire creation. Think of that. Just as you are the God of your body, yeah, you rule your body. Your body is there to serve you, and that it has its own life. That each cell has its own life, each organ has its own life, but the whole lot taken together forms a body, and that body is what you are incarnated into. So you can think of the universe, all the star systems, all the Milky Way, all the other constellations, and the various planets, everything is all part of the big body of God. And you can think of the intelligence, the mind of God inhabiting this body and having its own will. That will is the will for experience, for growth, for knowledge, for being. It's expressed. And we are the children of that, in the sense that we have the image imprinted in us of those same characteristics, but on a much smaller scale, the microcosmic scale compared with the huge macrocosmic scale. And with Jesus Christ, well, you have to understand that this planet is, an environment suited for these bodies that we live in. We read at the beginning of the book of Genesis, the terraforming of the earth. That's what it is. It already exists in darkness. There's already there. And then all sorts of things that happen. The invention of light, the invention of the sun and moon, and the invention of the waters come above and below, and the fish and the birds and the animals, and eventually mankind. It's a very brief poetic description of terraforming. So you could say that this planet is not quite what you think it is. It's the whole idea of evolution is complete nonsense. It doesn't all evolve here. It takes huge intelligence to make even a microbe, let alone all what you see outside there in nature, all the trees and flowers and animals and plants and people. It's an enormous, task. And I speak as a former computer programmer. The programming the DNA does not happen by chance. It takes a huge intelligence to have designed the system and then use the system to create different forms of bodies that you see. It doesn't just happen because a cosmic ray happens to bang onto a frog and the frog turns into a lizard, and another cosmic wave hits that lizard and it turns into a mammal. It doesn't happen like that. It can't happen like that. It's impossible. It happens because intelligence makes it happen, and that's done not on this planet, it's done elsewhere, and it's brought here. The life is brought here and planted on the earth. So you have to understand that, and then you would need to understand something else, that we are, in ourselves, we're spirits, and I'm going to come to more what that means in due course, but the spirits come here and they look down on nature and they fall in love with it. That's what happened. And they wanted to be part of it. So they came down and took on animal form. And in doing so, in entering into these animal bodies, the vibrations level of this planet is much lower than the vibrational level of the spirit world, you could say. So in coming down here, we became cut off from the Logos stream. The Logos stream brings not just energy, but life. That's what it says, the light, and the light was the life force that's brought and given to everything that exists. We became cut off from a direct linkage with that. We had to come, and we have to eat of nature. Nature has the ability to take light from the sun and turn it into food. That's basically what it does. Everything that's growing, I've got grass outside my window here. The grass is growing because of the light. Cut off the light, the grass will be gone. So will all the trees and flowers and everything else. And all the things that feed off that, they would all be gone as well. This would be a barren lump of rock, maybe with some water sloshing around it. But it's because of the light, and the light comes from the sun, and the sun receives energy from the universe. It's not an atomic bomb. That's another fallacy we've been taught. It's not an ongoing atomic bomb that's been running for billions of years. It's a body that's a plasma body experiencing a huge discharge event of electricity coming into it from elsewhere and causing it to give out light. And that light is what illuminates us here on Earth and illuminates the other planets too. But that's what it's all about. So we're in a situation where coming to Earth, that is biting the apple. Taking that bite out of the apple is symbolic of entering into the earthly sphere. The Earth is the apple. And in doing so, we end up having to rely on the apple for our food. And the trouble with that is that we enter into the realm of life and death. We come into a situation, everything that lives dies. So we come into a situation where we are allotted certain years, 70, 80, 90 years, maybe 100 if you're lucky. But that's it. And then you're going to die. And your spirit, your soul, will be released from your body. And I'll come to a bit more about that shortly. But your body itself is going to die and go back into the earth. And it will have to, this is a situation that we're in. We're not connected to the life force. So we're either going to have to reincarnate very quickly and come back into another body to support us. Because understand that the food that you eat gets digested in your stomach, and then it feeds all the other cells in your body, and they create electricity. And the electricity is what your brain and your organs run on. So you are actually a hybrid motor, you could say. You're like a hybrid car. You can put energy into it in the form of food, and it can digest it and turn it into electricity. And it's electricity that you run on. And as long as you've got food, and as long as you can eat, and as long as you can digest, and as long as your body is in reasonable health, you can stay alive. But as soon as things go wrong and bits break and you can't eat, or one of your more of your organs fails, you're going to die unless you can be plugged in. And you're not plugged in, so you're stuck. So this brings us back to the whole idea of the spirit world and why Jesus came here, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the spirit world is what you leave this body, and I want you to understand that the word spirit, the literal meaning of spirit, comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath. So inspire, taking in breath, expire, breathing out. And you expire your last breath, you die. And that breath goes into what? Does it just dissolve away? Well, it's a symbol also of something else. The you who looks through your eyes, the you who listens with your ears, feels with your touch, smells and tastes. The you that has all your memories and your recognitions and your knowledge. Everything that makes up you is taken out of you. And if you go on YouTube and have a look, you'll find there were many, many videos of people who died and came back. I don't know if you've heard of this, but sometimes people actually die. They die maybe in the operating theatre, or maybe through some accident, and their heart stops and they leave their body. And then they go and they have extraordinary experiences. Maybe they go up a tunnel of light and they meet angels, or they find themselves in a beautiful garden and they meet Jesus, or maybe something else happens. And then they come back and they see this body and say, oh no, if I got to go back into that. And they get drawn back in. They feel all the pain that they've escaped pain at that point before. Oh God, it's awful. But they still have things to do here. So they come back into the body. And they have the memory of where they were, what they did, and who spoke to them. They met their relatives. They were told, no, it's not your time yet, you have to go back. There are lots of videos. It's not just one or two. There are hundreds of them. And you'll find that some of the people who have this experience are not all dimwits. You have doctors and professors and people who, before that, they were skeptics. They didn't believe in anything else other than the physical world. They were materialists. Materialist means you only believe in the material world. You only believe that things that you can touch, taste, and measure exist. They don't believe there's anything else. After that experience, they realise there is, and that it changes them totally. So, what is this spirit world as opposed to the material world? And people still exist when they leave their body. They actually exist more than when they're in the body. It's like the body limits us rather than extending us. We think of the body as being our ability to have more. We think of ourselves as being able to think better than the animals because we've got larger brains. Or um, if you if you lose one of your senses, perhaps you lose your sight, you're limited. You haven't got the same abilities in the material world as you had before. And same with hearing loss or any other sense loss, or you lose a limb. We're used to that concept that you want a healthy body with all of your faculties. But when you leave your body, your soul leaves your body, you lost all of them. You've lost your eyes, you lost your ears, you lost your legs, you've lost everything. You don't have a body. You have nothing with which to eat. You have nothing with which to breathe. You have nothing with which to see, or so it seems. But the spirit world has its own laws, which are rather different from the material world that we live in. And if you can be someone who's reconnected to the Logos stream, then you're certainly going to have energy. Your mind will carry on, and your being will carry on. In fact, it carries on in a much better way than in the physical form. You can take any physical form you like in the spirit world. You can look like you did when you were 20, if that's what you want. You can look like you're 80, if that's what you would prefer. And you can do either, according to the situation and the choice you have. You might want to look like something entirely different. So the spirit world is actually a place of freedom from constraints of the material world. We only need a material body to access the material world when we're cut off. And yet another strange thing to think about is that we think of the spirit world as being up there somewhere. You know, you leave your body, go up there. Well, actually, the spirit world is all around you. It interpenetrates the material world. And I can give you a good example of this. I had a friend who was a very extraordinary clairvoyant. I haven't met anyone else quite like her. I've met quite a few clairvoyants in my life, but she was probably the most extraordinary. And she would see dead people, she would talk to them, she would see all sorts of things and people that other people don't see. And I remember once I took her down to Canterbury Cathedral, which is the leading cathedral in England. And it's a very beautiful, lovely old building, going way back to Norman times. And the foundation is Saxon, long before the Normans, but the present building was mostly built in Norman times, which means about 1100 and 1200, that sort of period. So I took her down there, we were having a look, and she said, I need to spend some time alone, do you mind? And I want to go and explore a little. I said, yeah, please do. So she went off, and a little while later, I was with my wife at the time as well, and she came back and said, oh, I had a great time, and said, but can you tell me something, Adrian? She said, can you tell me, I was shown around by this monk, and he's called Anselmus. Can you tell me anything about Anselmus? Now, I laughed because Anselmus would be Saint Anselm, who was a very famous Archbishop of Canterbury from the very early days, probably around 1200 or that kind of time, maybe a bit earlier. And she didn't know who he was at all, but he was one of the people who had built parts of Canterbury Cathedral. So she was meeting the spirit who was still there. On another occasion, I wasn't with her at this time, but she went to Westminster Abbey, and she said that when she was going in Westminster Abbey, that she said, all the souls of the kings and queens, they're all there. She said, and she was able to speak to them, and they were amazed that she could see them. And you have to understand that in Westminster Abbey is the centre of the cult of royalty in Britain. And many of our most famous kings and queens are buried there, including people like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, Henry V, Richard II, lots of these people are buried there, and she saw their souls, and she was able to talk to them. And you begin to understand why coronations are held there, because when a king or queen is crowned in Westminster Abbey, they're not just doing it in front of the tomb of Edward the Confessor, who's buried there, and no doubt he was one of the people who's watching, but all of them, they're all going to be there seeing who this next guy is going to be. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's just in your imagination and her imagination, but I've seen enough of this lady to know that she's for real, and I've known plenty of other psychics who've been able to speak to people like my own parents, for example, and tell me things that they couldn't possibly know. Usually when someone who's dead comes to speak to you, they have a message for you or whatever, they'll identify themselves, and usually they'll do that by telling the person, the psychic, something that only you would know and they would know, that the psychic couldn't possibly know. And that's happened to me with my mother and my father, and my little sister who also passed over. So I know that this is for real. And sometimes I'm able to actually communicate directly with these people, clairaudiently. I have that gift, and I don't use it very much, only if it's called upon. But it does happen. And so you have to understand that the spirit world is interpenetrating the physical world, and in many ways it's much more powerful. We think of spirits as being thin, ethereal things, a sort of ghostly image that floats around. Actually, it's not. They have powers and they have knowledge and abilities beyond ours, because they're connected at one level or another. They're not all at the same level, of course, but they have, they're freed from the body, you could say. The body is actually a constraint on us, in a way, although it supports us at the same time. So I want you to understand that there is this spirit world, but it's also a very frightening thing that we live dependent on this planet. And it's a bit like being in a submarine. The submarine's fine as long as the systems are all working. You could be 1,000 feet underwater, and as long as you've got food there, you've got your engines working, you've got enough food, you've got the fuel, and the air is being regenerated, you can breathe, you can go on there for a very long time. But if things go wrong, then it's a very dangerous place to be, because if you get a hole in that submarine, it's going to fill up with water, isn't it? Or if your engines break down, it's very quickly going to become cold. It won't be able to support itself. You run out of food, you're in a pickle. So there are these considerations about being parachuted down into this planetary world that we live in, that we can't stay here forever. We need to get out. And I want you to understand that the reality of the Bible and first of all, the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Jesus mission, is a rescue mission. And interestingly, I'm also convinced that there was an earlier rescue mission in Egypt, long before that, but it ran into trouble. This is another attempt at a rescue mission. So the rescue mission has been sent here to bring us back. And it's a bit like, if you imagine you're in Afghanistan during the wars there, and the Taliban and Al Qaeda and the ISIS people are after you, and a helicopter comes, and they say, come on, quick, and you sit back and say, well, I don't know, I don't really trust you, I don't believe in you, I'll find my way out, don't worry, Yeah, I'm okay. I've got food here. I'll be all right. Well, you're taking a big risk. You're taking a big risk because do you know, are you really up to it? Uh, these Taliban guys, they're like Bear Grylls. They know their way around these hills and mountains and valleys. They're survivalists. They're going to survive all right. Are you up to it? Uh, Maybe not. Uh, are you going to be able to make your way back to get out of here on your own? You might say, well, I do yoga, I do Zen, I meditate, I'm a good person, I'll be all right. Um, well, would you be all right walking along that narrow ridge if there weren't Bear Grylls there to go first and help you across? Would you? Would you be able to do that on your own? You know, then tie the rope round the bush and abseil down the rock, then jump into the water and swim out to the other side. Would you be up to that? Up to that? When you've got the Taliban chasing you from behind as well? I think you need a rescue mission, and the rescue mission has been sent here. And the symbol, the most powerful symbol of Christianity is the Holy Grail. And you can think of that Holy Grail as having been planted here. And if you can find it, it will give you the energy you need. But you've got to find it. That's another image. Now, I've had a sip out of the Grail. I know what it's like. I don't know how to make the wine to put in the Grail. That's not my role. I don't have that ability. I can't give it to you directly, but there is someone who can. And you need to ask for help. You need to find the help that will get you across that ledge to Abseil, across the river. Get out of here. And the help mission, the ultimate symbol in the Bible, is the New Jerusalem, which comes down, we're told, and lands. It's a huge city, 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles, with 12 gates and 12 angels on those gates. And if you are worthy, you can come in to the city through one of those gates. If you aren't worthy, the angels will turn you away. You won't be able to get in. So you need to take your time now, because you don't have much time, I can tell you, to find the training that you need. And that's where people like myself come in to do boot camp with, to help you find to show you how to use the equipment, tell you what boots that you need to be wearing, make sure you have a parachute, make sure you have the right clip-ons that you can use to hang on to that rope, all that kind of thing. Maybe get you walking up some small hills and learning how to do some of this stuff that you're going to need to do on the real journey. But the guy who's going, the Bear Grylls, only much more so, that's going to help you to get along that ridge and over is Jesus Christ. Because he has the full connection, he has the power and the energy, and he can help you with the energy that you need to give you the courage to face the challenge of the situation and to find your way to get off this planet. That's what you need to do. I find it so funny. Elon Musk is desperate for us to build these massive spaceships to take us to Mars so he can build another city there as a backup, sort of Noah's Ark. In a way, he's right, but in a way, he's totally wrong. That Mars is a barren planet. I don't know how they're going to survive there. Not for any length of time, not without an umbilical cord to Earth, because these bodies are made for Earth. And that's probably a very poisonous place for us to be. But the idea that we need to get off the Earth before everything goes haywire and you know, it goes through some horrible catastrophe, uh, out of which maybe only, you know, a few primitive life forms survive. You know, there've been 6 planetary extinctions in the fossil record, that everything was cleared off and new things were planted 6 times. And on some of those occasions, I think up to 99% of life was killed off. And it had to be started again. It can take a long time. And you might find yourself as a soul in some kind of hell or limbo. You don't want that. You want to be taken off in the good time. You want to go to the good place. You don't want to be having to scrape a living in hell, do you? That's only an image, I know. But you want your soul to go up rather than down. And that is what the rescue mission is for. And that's what this college is for, to help you have the knowledge and the preparation that you'll be able to embrace the opportunity when it comes to you, and you'll get into the New Jerusalem when it arrives and manifests. So that's all I wanted to speak to you about today. Much more there. If you haven't already found it, I have a website called invisiblecollege.uk. Invisible College is all one word, .uk, and there's links there to all the programs, or most of them, that I've recorded for the public viewing on YouTube. I'm also putting videos now onto Rumble, and I'll develop that further as I go on. There's only a few there at the moment. I'm going to increase the numbers steadily. It takes time. And also there's Patreon. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by becoming a member in Patreon. And by becoming a member, you also get the possibility of watching other videos, more practical ones. When I say practical, what I mean is more like the courses that I'm going to unravel over time. Teachings, definite teachings. The public lectures are more about showing you what's possible, rather than taking you climbing the foothills, as it were, which we will do more and more in the Invisible College itself. And there are different levels to that. There's the sort of bronze level I call pawn, because I use chess symbolism. And the pawns carry the possibility of transformation into becoming queens or royalty, if you like, at some later stage. The second level is the knights, and then my Knights of the Round Table. And we're working on developing and reaching up to become Grail Knights. And then there are Baron levels above that, and then the Royal levels. But it only costs you £5 a month to start. It's not a lot, not much more than the price of coffee in this country. Certainly not. I've paid over £5 for a pint of beer before now, so you know, much more than that in London. So it's not a lot to ask of you, and you'll be helping this work to progress. There are also kind of associate memberships which are being handled in Patreon as well now. That just gets you onto the mailing list, and you might or might not get mailings from time to time. There's no guarantee on that. But there's a newsletter that goes out to members on Patreon quite regularly, usually once a week, sometimes more. So that's it for now. And even if you don't want to get involved with any of this, you think I'm a nutcase, well, that's your choice. You have freedom of will on this planet. That's one of the reasons for coming here. But if you've got any sense, you choose to get on that helicopter and you get out of the way before the bad times are really on top of us. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak again. Bye-bye.